Joey. Today I am doing the sweetest little project because two worlds have collided here. If you guys are getting the bargain bead box, then this beautiful crystal cube in a light steel, it's a fancy cube that's faceted in a light steel blue, and I just absolutely loved it. But like I said, two worlds collided because I got my 11.0 Seed Beads of the Month Club, and these beads, these seed beads, are called dyed smoky opal silver lined alabaster, and they are like an exact match. And so I said I have to do a project. So I've made some little components with my one-step looper and those seed beads and some gold wire from the Softflex company, some 20 gauge and 22 gauge wire, and I'm gonna connect these into a little bracelet project. So I will show you how I do my herringbone stitch. I have a really easy way of making it, and I'll show you how I make these sweet little spiral beads. They're really easy as well. And you know, when I'm doing a beaded chain or a rosary chain, which for me is classic jewelry, it's one of my go-to techniques. I love my one-step looper for that. So I have dumped some of the seed beads in my beading tray, and I just have this little bead cap mix, which I actually ordered when I was making birdcage earrings, because there's so many different shapes and sizes of bead caps, but these are the ones that I picked out for the spiral beads. And so this is super easy. The first thing I'm going to do is grab my one-step looper in the 1.5 millimeter size, and I'm just going to put a little simple loop in the bottom, and I want to get this nice and straight and smooth. And this is my Softflex 22 gauge craft wire. And then for the wire that goes through the middle, the wire that my simple loop is on and the wire that goes through the middle, I use 20 gauge for that. And I also use 20 gauge for my core wire on my herringbone, and then the 22 gauge for the outside. We'll do that together too. I have a really easy way to make them. I am going to close this loop, but this is going to need some more sculpting when I'm finished, but I am going to start with a nice neat closed loop. And I counted 50 of my seed beads for my spiral bead. And so a lot of times when I make these, I do them different sizes. You know, you can do them larger and bigger, but I want to try to get these to be pretty much the same. So I'm going to count 50 on my 22 gauge wire. Okay, I have my 50 seed beads on here, and I'm going to come to this side and put another simple loop. And you could totally do your simple loops with your pliers, but I really like this tool. But now this time, let me get all my seed beads. That one got caught in my one-step looper. Get down there. This time, I'm just going to gently close the tool, and I want to leave about 1 inch of space here, because when we spiral, it eats up some of the length on the wire. And you could measure, like if you wanted to measure from the end of your bead to, like, you know, the front jaw of the plier, you could do that. But I'm just going to eyeball it and let my tool make a cut, make a loop, and I'm just going to pull that down so my loop is centered. That's just my habit, and this is only 22 gauge wire, so the one-step looper's not really thrilled with that, but you'll see these loops are going to get a lot of attention in this bead. So I have this little mandrel. It's a set of 2. There is a smaller one as well, and I used this middle step to kind of guide my spiral. So I'm going to put one of my simple loops there and put my thumb over it and get a little curve started, and then I'm going to feed my seed beads down onto that curve and keep going and kind of feeding those seed beads down. you'll see that that empty space, it seems like a lot, but you'll see that you end up using it up. And I'm just going to spiral all the way to the other simple loop. So we're not looking much like a spiral, but it will. And so now what I want to do is take this simple loop here in my pliers, and I'm just going to pull it toward the middle, and I'm going to come to this end and do the same thing. Get that simple loop and just pull it toward the middle. And so there's a little bit of hand sculpting involved in this. I'm going to pull this out. Pull it out a little bit, and then I need my loop in the middle. Not only do I need to reclose it, but I need it to be flat and in the center. So I'm just turning it, and I'm going to pull this, and you can take a piece of wire to see how you did as far as getting it in the center. I'm going to come to this side and do the same thing. Just pull this out a little bit of hand sculpting on these, and just pull this loop to the center, and I'm going to get a hold of it, and I want it to be flat. And from here you can like tighten up your spiral. It's 22 gauge wire and seed beads, so it's really easy to maneuver. And that's what, can you see I'm just doing a little twisting and pull this out and just get that loop nice and flat. And again, you can come back and check. I can see I'm not there yet because, you know, when I put my wire through, it's obviously way off center. So a little bit more sculpting. I'm just going to pull this toward the center, and same thing on this side. Get it toward the center and get my spiral looking the way I would like it. See how I did? It's not bad. This one is still needs a little attention. It's not, I will fiddle with this until I have my spirals, you know, pretty perfect. Just getting that loop so that when I go through the center of my bead, see, it's still not centered. This one is off. So, you know, just take a second after you have your spiral in there to make those little adjustments a little at a time. Okay, I'm really happy with that. And so now I'm going to grab a piece of 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to come in with my 2 1/4 millimeter one-step looper. I'm just making a little bit bigger loops because it makes a bracelet or a necklace more articulated. And I'm just going to get a simple loop again in one end. If you wanted to do a wire wrapped loop here, you could, and just work hard in that loop. And I'm going to take one of my bead caps and feed that on, and then run my wire through both of my loops on my little spiral bead, and then put a bead cap on the other side and flip this around and put it back in my tool. And you have a little springiness, so you have the opportunity to kind of push this up to your, you know, up to the edge of the tool here and let it make a cut for you. I pull my spiral bead down so that I can close my tool and align my loops just like that. And when you take it out, look at that beautiful little spiral bead. They're so fun to make. They really are. Okay, I'm gonna have to make a couple more of those, but I just wanted to show you what I'm doing, and I'm gonna do the others off camera. This is for another spiral bead. And so I'm gonna use this piece of 20 gauge wire as my core wire for my herringbone. And then I'm gonna pull some 22 gauge off my spool. You can also use a finer gauge than 22. I had to take a little pause because the man and his wife that do the yard were right on my back patio with their equipment going. So I had to take a little pause. Some days it is just surprising, all the noise when you're trying to work. So I went ahead and made another one of my spiral beads. So I'm ready to connect. Aren't they gorgeous? Honestly, those seed beads were just gorgeous, but with these cube beads. And I'll show you, I'm using that 2 1/4 millimeter one-step looper to also make the components. And so I just have to like hold these up. Look at that. Isn't it gorgeous? I mean, I just love it. I wanted to make a necklace, but this is the kind of thing that I want it on my wrist because I want to see it. So what I'm going to do is take my 22 gauge wire, and like I was saying when the noise started, if you wanted to go, I do this with all gauges. You can go down to 24, you could even do 26, but as you can see, the 22 gauge really shows up really nicely. It really makes a pretty herringbone. So I'm just going to start by getting a couple of wraps around my core wire, which is my 20 gauge. Always use the heavier gauge for a core because when you're making beads, it really stabilizes the beads. And I'm just going to trim this and get those couple of wraps really nice and neat. And you know, like mine are always loose. I just don't have a lot of strength in my hand, so it's a little bit loose on here, but that is totally okay. Don't let that bother you. This is such an easy way to do the herringbone. So I have 2 wraps here on my core wire, and then I'm going to take one of my cube beads. And the cube beads, especially if you're newer to doing herringbone, these are so easy to do the herringbone wrap on because this thickness, this width here, makes it really easy to do this wrap. So I'm leaving myself enough space here to either wrap a loop or do a simple loop. Just going to leave myself a little bit extra, and I'm going to take this wire and go right down the side of my cube. The first one is wobbly for sure. I'm just going to get in here, and I'm trying not to cover my work with my thumb and finger, but really that's how you have to do it, is get a hold of it with your thumb and forefinger. And I'm wrapping on top of my core wire, and these are not big cubes, so it is hard to hold on to, but I'm going to go behind and back around to the front, and I'm going to go one more time so that it matches the wraps on the other side. So my cube is still a little bit wobbly in there, but that's okay. Let me get everything smooth and I'll show you. So if your first wraps are not like tight enough for you, you can take your nylon jaw pliers and just push everything together. I do that quite a lot. And so that's what I'm looking like, and my wire is on top, you know, it's on the top. And so I'm going to get a hold of my whole situation with my thumb and finger and come down the side of the cube on the opposite side, rotate my work, pinch it with my thumb and forefinger, and now again my wrapping wire is on top of my core wire, and also I'm going to go right on top of my last wrap and then go behind and back around to the front. And I'm just going to keep rotating my work like that. And like I say, that's pretty tight, but if as you go you notice that you didn't wrap quite tight enough, you can take your nylon jaw pliers and neaten yourself up. And now like everything is really stable, so now it gets easier. When I go down this side this time, I'm going to lay this wire behind my first wrap. So I'm looking at the front of my bead. I've designated it the front. And same thing, I'm on top of my core wire, and I'm going to go behind and back around to the front. And just keep it warm and smooth. And I see, you know, when I go slow to explain, I actually mess myself up. I'm better if I just keep going. So I'm going to go down again, and always behind. This wire lays behind the first wrap that you did, which is why I love to do herringbone on a cube bead, because you have that space there to work with. And then it's on top of my core wire, so I'm going to wrap behind and back around to the front. And I'm just going to keep going like that, always putting my wire down behind my previous wraps, get it with my thumb and forefinger, and behind and back around to the front. And I think that I did 4. I did do 4. So I have 3 there and only 2 here. So that's, you also want to finish up where you have the same number of wraps on each side. So behind my existing wraps on the top, go behind and back around to the front. And if you feel like you want to tighten everything up, just pause your wrapping and give everything a push with your nylon jaw pliers. Okay, I have 1 more on each side. Give that a push. I'm going to trim in the back and just tuck that wire or chase it around my core wire. And I just want to straighten out my 20 gauge wire. And so from here, you can do whatever you want with this. You can do wire wrapped loop. I'm just going to bring my 1-step looper in and do the exact same thing, all the loops. I like that when I'm making earrings or bracelets. And so I'm going to turn my bead upside down since I'm using my 1-step looper, because the 1-step looper makes the loops this way, and I want the opening of my loops to be on the back of my cube bead. So I'm going to fit this in my 1-step looper, gently close it. I'm pretending that my last wrap is the edge of the bead, so I'm just going to push it up right there and let it make the loop for me. I'm going to pull my whole situation down as I close the loop, and just get everything nice and straight, and that is good to go. Close and work harden, and then I'm going to, again, working on the back side of my herringbone, put my wire in, push my wraps as if they were the edge of my bead right up to the front cutter. Let it make that loop for me. Pull everything down, and that way I can see that that loop is centered on my piece and everything is aligned. And that beautiful, beautiful little herringbone beaded component is done. And so I'm also using my 1-step looper and my little scraps of wire to do my cube beads, to make those into components. So just past the back cutter when there's no beads on the tool, and let it make the cut, make my loop. I like to, tidy up. It's my habit to put my pliers on all my loops and work hard and make sure they're closed. But I'm just going to feed on one of the cube beads, and again I'm turning it. The opening of my loop is at the top because the 1-step looper always goes that way. This time I'll be using the guide hole, and this time I'm pushing my cube bead as I close right up to the front jaw of the plier, and it makes that loop for me. I'm going to pull my cube down. I haven't closed all the way because I don't want to damage my bead. And so sometimes this is a quirky little tool. Sometimes, depending on the bead shape that you're adding the loops to, sometimes you can't close it, or like in this case, it didn't do a bad job, but it's not closed all the way. And for me, that is totally fine, because I would work harden and fuss with my loops anyway, but I get these perfect little components every single time. So I have to just see how many more components I'm actually going to need. So let me line this up, and I also have to decide if I'm going to connect my simple loops right to each other, or if I want to connect with jump rings. And I think that I'm leaning towards just connecting them right to each other. And it looks like I have more than a bracelet length here. which makes me think that, and I have plenty of cubes left, and I have plenty of seed beads left and plenty of gold wire left. So I'm thinking that maybe I'm going to do a bracelet and a necklace set. Let me see what my length is. Oh yeah, I only really need about a 7-inch bracelet, so this is way more than I'll even need. And I like to do extender chains on my bracelets. And this is just connecting from here. That puts me at 6 inches. That puts me at 7 inches. So I think I'm going to connect these and have a bracelet, and then I think I'm going to keep going and use these up and make a coordinating necklace. So I'm going to need more seed beads. And so you guys, also, when I said at the beginning that I counted 50 seed beads for my spiral beads, I did, and that was what I did the first one, and that's just the number that I came up with. And I knew that if I counted 50 and left myself 1 inch to 1.25 inches of empty wire when I make the spiral bead, that they would all be relatively similar, and they are. So if you want a bigger bead, you could do 60 seed beads. If you want it smaller, I don't know if you'd want it much smaller than that, but you could try. So let me just connect and get a clasp, and then I'm going to keep going and do the same thing with the herringbone and the seed beads, spiral beads, and I think this is going to be a beautiful necklace bracelet set. And so the cool thing about my herringbone too is I can open any loop. All of these are simple loops, and so I can open my herringbone bits. I can open pretty much any of my loops, and they're all the same size. And like I said, I did go up to the 2 1/4 because if I want to connect the loops directly to each other, it's a larger loop, and it makes for a nice fluid chain, tight chain. Okay, here's what I decided to do. A lot of you are regulars on my channel, and so you know what this is. I create these base necklaces for myself in my favorite metals. My chains here are from Purity Beads, so they're solid brass and they have an anti-tarnish coating. And so this is one of my base necklaces. There's no clasp in the back because I put decorative lobster claw clasps on the front, so it's front closure. And then I make these necklace sections. This is one that I did a couple months back from Sam's Bead Box, and then I can change out my add-in section by just opening the lobster claw clasps and creating another section. So what I decided to do is make another similar to this in length, and that will be an add-in section to one of my necklaces, and then I don't have to bead an entire necklace because I already have this. And so this will be, I'll do another one of these that's like, that's going to clip, and I'll have a necklace bracelet set. So that's what I decided to do instead of making an entire necklace, because about a year ago I did a crystal beaded chain necklace, and I thought, well, I already have something similar, but I love this. I just love it so much. So I did 3 little extender chain links, and I put a lobster claw clasp here with a swivel feature, so it makes these things really easy to take on and off. And also from Purity Beads, I have this little brushed heart, and I'm going to take one of the cube beads, and out of my scrap bag, my Soft Flex 49 strand wire in gold, and I am going to thread, let's see, how do I want to do this? I'm going to put my heart on, and then I'm going to string some seed beads on both sides of this to kind of make the look of a loop. So let me count, like, I don't know, 7. So it looks like that, and I'm going to take both of these wires and put them through my cube bead and pull it down, so I have this little heart, little charm or little dangle. And then I'm going to grab one of my, whoops, that's silver. I want a Soft Flex number 2 gold filled crimp tube, and I'm going to turn this into a little bead with my magical crimping plier. And these are gold filled, so they don't tarnish, and also they have a super thick wall. So I don't know if the camera will show you, it's really hard, but they have like triple the thickness on the wall of this crimp tube as normal crimps. And so like the Beadalon and the Beadsmith, those crimp tubes are really good quality, and they do work with the magical crimping plier. But if you're having issues making that tool work for you, try the Softflex crimp tubes, because they're really, really great. I use all of them, and once you get the feeling of it, you know, you will be able to use all of them as well. But it's just will help you. I think it helped me. Okay, and then I'm going to make a loop with one of my wires. Let me get this one that's not crimped, and I'm just going to go back down through the crimp tube, and this will go down through my bead as well, and just pull this tight. And really, you could flat crimp here, you could do the fold over crimp method here, but this is so pretty. This is just so pretty. I'm going to make that loop a little bit smaller, and I'm going to come in here with my tool and make sure that I feel that number 2 crimp tube is right in the center, and I just felt it go in. And now I'm going to close down, and you can see that it looks like a little square now with 4 pinched corners. So now I'm going to go in the opposite direction, and again make sure it just went in the center, and close in that direction. And now just stay in that position and open and close your tool a few times as you go around, and you're forming that tube into a little tiny gold bead. And it is the same size as an 11-0 seed bead. 11-0 seed beads are 2 millimeter, and this is a 2 millimeter crimp tube. So it really is magical, and it just makes the prettiest crimps and charms. I use it for so many things, so many little components. And let me not make a mistake. My wire is on the wrong side of the loop for trimming. I'm just going to pull it through the loop so that I can trim it without accidentally cutting my loop. That happens sometimes when you leave the wire hanging out. I'm just going to get really close and snip, and look at that beautiful little dangle. I just love it. So that's going to go on the end of my extender chain, just to add a little something. And I made my jump rings out of the same wire that I've done everything else in this piece in, so all my metals match. And I'm going to get busy making more components and making a necklace version. Essentially, I'm going to do exactly the same thing, but since it will be a necklace, I am going to maybe like put a spiral bead in the middle and kind of create a little pattern to add into my base necklace. I think it's going to be such a beautiful set, and I know these beads were in autumn boxes, but I see this as very icy, very wintry. So like I have a beautiful Italian cashmere lavender sweater that I love to wear the first time there's a cold day, and I see this like with that. So I will put some pictures up at the end. I'll come back and show you my necklace, but I'm going to repeat the same steps, the same everything that I did for these components, and just make more beaded beads and use my cubes. Look at this. Isn't that the prettiest bracelet? Oh my, I just can't wait to wear it. So my extender chain lays over my arm, and then I have 3 big links there that I can clasp to any of them. So depending if I'm layering this, oh my, look at this bracelet. I just love it. I love the little charm. It's so different, and I love all the components. That is just gorgeous. Okay, I'm going to get to making. It'll just be a second for you, and I'll be right back. All of my components are made for my necklace, add-in section, and I made a few decisions and a few changes on the necklace from the bracelet, but they will still coordinate. So I did the same components with the spiral seed bead and the herringbone bead, and then the cube bead component. But I decided on this one to connect my components with jump rings, because from those jump rings I want to hang a little heart. So I've done a pattern here. My spiral bead here is my center, and I'm just going to connect this half the same way that I connected this half. And I decided also to add a fancy jump ring to the final component, so it will be really, it's larger and it will transition onto the lobster claw, you know, add-in. I try to make my necklace add-ins be very easy to attach and also to look good as they transition to the part of the chain that, you know, is already existing. So all I'm doing is, instead of opening the loops, I'm just attaching those simple loops with a 6mm jump ring that I made out of 20 gauge, the same 20 gauge wire that I use for my components. So all my wire matches, and I'm just going to connect just like that. So I created a little pattern. In fact, I still have all of these guys left over, but we are done with those. So I just created a little pattern where this is my center or focal bead on the necklace. So let me connect up just like this in this order. And then I'll show you how pretty the little hearts, those, my hearts, my chain. I can't remember if I said earlier, because I had to take a pause. There was a little bit of a commotion here today, but I can't remember if I said, I know I told you the chain was from Purity Beads, but these little hearts are also from Purity Beads, and so they don't tarnish. And I bought them at a bead show, and I had quite a large stash of them. So I'm going to take 4 of them and make some drops here. One of these fancy jump rings on the end of my add-in necklace. I have to come up with a better name than add-in necklace, but that's what it is. I love having my base necklace, because also when I travel, I bring a base necklace, and I have some different links of this. And in my jewelry box, I have a separate tray for my sections, my necklace sections. And so when I travel, I'll bring a base necklace and choose 2 or 3 of these, and then I'm not carrying a lot of jewelry. So I'm going to take a little bit larger. This is a 8mm jump ring, and I'm going to go, I do need to lay this out so that I attach my hearts on the bottom of each connection. So that's my focal. And I'm just going to come right here and attach it to the bottom of the jump ring. And I'm going to do 4 of them. I'm going to do 4 of them right in the center of the necklace. So 1 on either side of my spiral bead, and then the next jump ring on either side of the next cube bead. I just want to make sure, because when you're connecting like this, can you see how I have my jump rings through the bottom of I have my heart jump rings through the bottom of the connecting jump rings, because if you inadvertently connect on top here, then your necklace, you know, your hearts won't dangle nicely. And I know that's a terrible camera angle for you, but I'm just going to pay attention to that. Just kind of lay this out on my mat, and so I can see that my next connection is right there. So I always say, oh, this is just a simple connecting project, and connecting is simple, you know, but you do have to pay attention, because if you don't connect things properly, then they will never hang right. So even though connecting is simple, but when I add my necklace here to my chain. And this is one of those necklaces that's going to be so much prettier on than it is on the mat. So I will put some better pictures up at the end. But I absolutely love it when two worlds collide like they did. I love my Adornable Elements Beads of the Month Club, and especially their seed beads. Every month that I have gotten it, I have found that they work back to other boxes that I receive in the month and that I review for you guys. And of course, Bargain Bead Box is such a great value. And this month when I unboxed, I had already seen the one bead, and then when I unboxed, I just couldn't believe how perfectly the seed beads from the Seed Beads of the Month Club matched with those beautiful cube beads. And I just love this little jewelry set. For 2025, sets of jewelry and jewelry suites are not really in style. The stylists are saying break them up, like if you wear a necklace from a set, then pop a different earring. And I think I didn't make earrings for that reason. I'm going to do just some Italian gold hoops that I brought back from Italy with my necklace and my bracelet, just to break it up a little bit and, you know, be in style. I like to watch the trends, and I don't jump on every trend, but they're fun. So this is such a beautiful set. And if you guys get both of these boxes, then don't forget how good of a match those beads are. And also, if you're interested in either one of those boxes, Adornable Elements Beads of the Month Club or Bargain Bead Box, I have a discount code from both companies, and I will put links in the description box for both of them. If you use my links, it helps out my channel, but you also can use my code and get a discount. And also, if you guys would just hit that thumbs up, it really helps support my work. It tells the YouTube algorithm that there's quality content here and that they should show it to a wider audience. And also, there's an update to YouTube. You may see the opportunity to hype a video. You're allowed to do it, I think, 3 times a week. And if you see that, I would greatly appreciate if you do that for one of my videos, because it really does help support my channel. I thank you all so much for watching. I cannot wait to be back with my next video. I am working on a handmade bead video, and they are so beautiful. I'm so excited about it. I have some drying right off to the side where and I'm just so excited that I had to mention it. So I will see you guys in the next video. Ciao, friends.